And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it's Wednesday morning. It's hump day, getting through that week. I hope everyone's being safe out there with these Arctic temperatures in New York and New Jersey, the tri-state area, and all the snow that you have to deal with. So be careful out there shoveling. We got a great guest today. Good morning, John. We have Brandon Castro at the age of 25 years old running for New York Assembly in Queens, a Queens native, graduated from Queens College. Quite interesting, impressive young man who's already taken big steps. So, Brandon, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Tell us, at the age of 25, what made you decide, so significant at such a young age, which I think is super impressive, to run for New York Assembly, especially in Queens. Let's get your story. Good morning.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me here today. It's an early start. It just started to snow before I was doing my rounds of shoveling. But so I am actually 26. I mean, it's very, very close off. And this is my second time running. I ran in 2024, and at that point I was 24, and I got around 40%. And that was during a presidential year. You know, we really gave it our best shot against an incumbent. This time it being an open seat. And, you know, I had actually filed to run prior, not knowing that was even going to happen. And so I feel like I've had some pretty good luck. I've had some pretty good fortune. But either way, we were trying to take down a beast, trying to take down the giant, trying to fight the establishment here, trying to take on the Democrats. And now there's an open seat. And I don't even know who my opponent is going to be. But I found for a long time there was a lack of balance and dialogue. You know, a lot of people my age, whether they're 35, 19, or 26 like me, they're having a hard time finding jobs. It's hard to afford the cost of living here. And we just feel like the leaders that we have now, they put a lot of lip service to it, but a lot of them are entrenched. They don't really care to serve us. They just care to climb up the political ladder. And we need some fresher faces there. You know, that's partly why Zoran had done well. Trump articulated that message very, very well. And we need people who live and breathe the problems of the current and the previous generations here now. And I'm more than happy to be here and explain the vision that I have.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we just realized the other day there was just an announcement in the paper that a retired NYPD lieutenant, Shamshul Haq, was running in the same district. He's running for that seat as well, for that open seat that you're running for. And he's running to further Zohran Mamdani's agenda of taxing the rich, of fundamentally transforming the NYPD. What's your vision and your message, and what lines are you going to be seeking to run on?
Well, one, I'm not the Democrat candidate. He's running in the Democrat primary. I believe there's only 3 people there now. It's a very weak slate, which is fortunate for me. But no matter what, I'm just ready to tackle it on. But I'm the Republican and assuming a conservative candidate. I'll be on both of those party lines for November 3rd. And the vision that I have is that I'm the education reform candidate. What I want is greater access to trade schools, vocational training, career development programs. That's a lot of where my background's from. I graduated from a vocational high school. I graduated from a community college where I was the career development committee chair there. And then before I graduated, we kind of took over the student government. But, you know, we have been through our rounds of getting canceled, of getting called names. Funny, I actually got a lot more heat when I ran for office in college than I did running for a state level office here. So I thought that was the funniest thing. But what I really want there is to be education reform. We spend over $30,000 per student, and yet the results that we see are just absolutely terrible. You know, I think we spend the most out of any other state. I think that California might be giving us a run for our money, but I just don't see the results there. And so I think that we need to have people to grow, to learn how to grow skills and jobs, grow the skills while they're still young, and then have the platform, have that experience there so that they can apply for work. You know, I have a lot of friends who graduated with me back in 2023, and they were having a hard time finding just a job at Target. They were having a hard time just finding jobs, and they graduated with like a 2 or 4 year degree. And I also tell people that I'm a pro housing candidate. Now, when I say that, they always say, "Oh, you just want to build housing." No, no, no. I'm an infrastructure candidate, meaning a lot of the communities that we have here aren't built to sustain a lot more housing units. That's a conversation that we need to have. But I just live here in Maspeth, and if I just walk a couple blocks down, the train is like a 15-minute walk away. And the more, if you add a housing unit on a single block, you're going to put further strain and stress on not only the sewer systems, but the waning infrastructure that we also have here. And so there's a lot of problems that we have to fix. And I always tell people I'm not a one size fits all candidate. Every problem has its own solution. And I'm here to talk about that.
I think, Brandon, for one, I think our audience and our friends and our listeners are going to be super impressed with you as we are also. I mean, and by the way, I apologize. I thought that you're 25, but outstanding. Even at 26 is super impressive. And I'm impressed with you and in your knowledge and your background. What's interesting to me is most young people, I would say, and I don't know what the statistics are, but just based on my own observations, especially in New York City, tend to lean left. And you took a different path. So if you could tell us how did that how is that significant for you? Like, what made you take this path?
Right. Well, I can't say I've always been conservative. When you're very young, you don't really know. But I've been a registered one since I was in high school. As soon as they were telling us to register to vote, I never registered Democrat. And so this has always been, I guess it has a lot more to do with my temperament and the values that I share. I was born and raised a conservative Catholic. I have Catholic values, traditional values. And so it's something that I relate to more, especially when it comes to hard work, lifting up yourself, earning your way in. There's a lot of people. So I actually used to work for the New York City Department of Small Business Services. I got the job just as I had graduated from college, but there was a lot of people my age, and it just seemed like they wanted more, but they didn't feel like they had to earn the higher paycheck. And I just never complained about a single thing. The only thing I ever actually complained about was parking, because I'm actually not the greatest.
Why is that? Why is that? Why is that the young people? By the way, sorry I froze. But why is it that the young people want more? Like, what has changed from, like, let's say John and I growing up, or the generation before? What has changed?
Well, I think that a lot of people are frustrated. They're angry. What they are seeing is that the housing prices are skyrocketing. And I know that my parents, my grandparents that came here prior, they work very hard, and I could probably say they work harder than I probably ever will. But we could make a good amount of living, and yet we'll still have to work probably twice as much, maybe probably longer, just to afford like a house, just to afford like a reasonable cost of living here. And people are feeling that. Also, like a college degree doesn't really mean much. People graduate with a 2 or 4-year degree. And yet what they are seeing is that there's not much benefit from that. And now they're wondering aimlessly, they didn't have the skills. They didn't try to network much. College told them that they need to take these sorts of classes. Same thing with high school. And then once they're done, there's not much going for them, and a lot of people often forget we're all going to go through hardships. Life is really, really hard. It's our job to not only make it fun, but make it something that is worth living for. But I just feel like for younger people, or just anybody, they're having a hard time doing that, and they're having a hard time feeling that need.
So Brandon, what are your, like, I know you're on education reform, and you want to build infrastructure, and they're vital, right? I agree with you on both of those points. What other things are you seeing out there in the political sphere of New York City, and just what the residents of New York City are dealing with that you believe you could help with?
Well, when it comes to public safety and quality of life in general, those are probably some of the top 2 concerns here. Anybody who's a parent, anybody who has a level of responsibility understands that those are vital needs. If an incident happens on a business owner's block, they're bleeding money on an hourly basis. If something happens on your block, you don't want your kid coming out late. And so, what we just saw with the recent, I think Zoran had proposes a budget, and he had threatened to cut if correct me if I'm wrong, it's 22 million from the NYPD, and he canceled 5,000 new police hires. And so I would have never even thought about doing that. That would have been not even the absolute last thing on my list. I just wouldn't have even thought about doing that. And so public safety is an absolute need. That is something. Part of my district has parts of Roosevelt Avenue. I'm sure you've heard of that before. They call it the Avenue of Sweethearts. And that was one of my topic positions, or that was one of my campaign policy positions in 2024. It's unfortunate there's a lot of people that are accustomed to seeing all of the prostitution and the garbage dumping, the littering going on there, where they don't really care. And so, we have to find different ways to approach that. But if I just walk 10 minutes away, it's night and day. Here is like a lot more quiet. This is like a suburban feel. There's a lot of families. There's a lot of homeowners, businesses that have been here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And yet you walk a couple of blocks down, it's the same thing, except it's a lot more populated. That's where you have the prostitution, you have crime. You like walk on a street and then you see like, it's just something that is not attractive for a business owner that wants to open up here. They're going to be bleeding money on a weekly basis. And yet, the rent is way too damn high. And what's the benefit from that? Our taxes are going up, and yet the quality of life is also going down. So we kind of need we kind of need like a balance here. And I just don't see it.
Well, I know you support public safety, right? We've seen an incident recently where cops are pelted with snowballs. So I know what changed. I know what legislation has gotten us to that. And I know, in my opinion, and I'm sure, John, culturally, what has gotten to that. Well, based on your observations, your opinion, and being a native New Yorker, what do you think culturally and legislatively has changed and gotten it to that point? Do you think that's a public safety issue that the cops are now under attack? Or do you think it's just a joke?
I think it definitely has to do with the bail reform laws, the discovery laws that they also changed, that really devastated a lot of the communities here. I would repeal, as an assembly member, we have the ability to vote on laws that affect the public policy along with the budget here. And I would repeal bail reform. That's been an absolute mess. It like allows people to get away with crimes. It allows repeat offenders to roam our streets. And then the Democrats here, regardless of party, although this is mostly like a one party state, they feel that, they could just talk about defunding our cops, disrespecting them. And yeah, we don't really have like, what are the conservatives saying here? What are the other Democrats saying? Like, there's some that have a level of common sense, not all, but some. But the ones that are speaking out are very few and far between. And that's part of the reason why, when you have someone at the top of the ticket, like a Zoran, and then a Kathy Hochul, who's flip-flops on every single thing known to mankind, but she's basically trying to get close to Zoran, knowing that this is like a general year, knowing that people are also going to be voting. She wants that progressive turnout. So you're going to expect to see a lot more of that.
Brandon, what do you think about what recently transpired? So there was a snowball fight. It was the third annual snowball fight. A lot of younger adults and school-age kids attended that snowball fight. 2 police officers are called in to a 911 call because there are males on top of the public restrooms in there throwing snowballs at passerbys that are on. So the police officers walk in and they start getting pelted with ice. They were both removed to the hospital. They had face and head injuries. Zohran Mamdani says it's just a snowball fight and we shouldn't seek prosecution. NYPD PBA President Patrick Henry, as well as the DEA's president, the Detectives Endowment Association president, Scott Monroe, both believe that this was assault on a police officer. What's your take on it?
Right. Well, I'm not shocked. They've always set a terrible precedent. But if you can get away with that, who's to say they're not going to take it like a step further every time? And there's been examples where they clearly do. And I believe where the incident happened, I believe it's the bluest congressional district in the entire state. So not only are the leaders not going to be speaking out, but the mayor that has no incentive or reason to do so. He already cut 5,000 new police hires, people who haven't had the experience yet. So I am not shocked, and it's about time that we have some change.
But you would support the arrest and prosecution of those individuals?
Of course.
I this is a great conversation, by the way. I think that listen. I don't have a problem if kids or adults want to have some type of snowball event. If they got the cops involved and said, "Hey, listen, can a couple of cops come down? Maybe community affairs or some unit, maybe the precinct, and they get involved in it." But this is pre-planned. That's something different. Everything's about manner. In this manner, I do believe it's assault on a police officer. It's different. It's a different manner. If the cops were involved, it's a community thing. That's different. But when the cops are actually there, and now it's no longer a joke, where they're pelted with snowballs. And I agree. I think bail reform is part of it, but I think it goes even beyond that with legislation, oversight, the just complete bias and disdain for police that comes from the Civilian Complaint Review Board, all these oversights. So, what are your thoughts talking about oversight? What are your thoughts on the Civilian Complaint Review Board? Have you ever attended any meetings at the Civilian Complaint Review Board? What are your thoughts on the Civilian Complaint Review Board and their position towards the NYPD?
Right. Well, so I've been a part of local meetings here. I'm not sure how it is. Really depends on the county, the borough, the part of the state that you are in. But there's always people that have complaints and about the lack of quality. That it would take hours. Like I had a car accident here just a couple of years back, and it took hours for the police to get here. So that was a very common concern to them. And what they would often say is that they need more resources. They would also need more funding, and they don't have that. Every year they're going to be advocating for more. I think the only person to really give them a level of leeway was Eric Adams, but he was like a mess as is. And so I don't know what their direct position is, but I do know that people have always had some very strong concerns.
Brandon, recently, a few of the NYPD police unions are advocating to state politicians, and they're asking for them to pass a halo law, which is what is happening in Florida under Governor Ron DeSantis. And what that law is it gives police officers a zone of safety. Now, it doesn't mean you can't walk up and approach and ask a police officer a question, but it does mean you can't come within 20 feet of a police officer, harass them, shove a camera in their face, smash a snowball off their face, smash ice off the back of their head. So it kind of gives a level of security to NYPD, and it gives a blanket of legal protection so that they are able to arrest individuals who do cross the line into their personal space. Hate to put you on the spot, but is that something that you would support?
I would be open to a conversation further. I'll just tell you that I definitely would aim to support that, but I'll be interested to hear what any concerns that people would have over that. But based off of everything that you're saying to me, and I have heard of that law before, not shocking that it would come from Florida, but I would definitely support that here.
I appreciate that you support public safety. Excuse me. And I was a delegate for the Sergeants Union. I was a delegate for the Lieutenants Union. And we would often hear, you know what, you got to get behind the Democrat because we have no friends in Albany. There's absolutely no chance of any Republicans in any seat in New York City, right? So, obviously, we talk about Kathy Hochul. But what else? What do you think is broken in Albany right now? And because that's the position you're going to be put in. Like, what do you think is broken in Albany right now and the obstacles that you're going to meet if you are elected?
Well, I will say at the moment that I win, there will be the biggest target on my back. I would be the only, assuming that we're able to flip like a few more seats, but I would probably be the only one in Queens. And so I would have a huge target before I even start. People would probably be contemplating on fundraising and ways that they could flip this seat back, especially during a presidential year. But I am game on for that. I didn't do too bad the first time around. But one of the, we are the super minority. I don't believe it's even veto proof. I believe the state Senate was just recently, they overturned the veto proof majority that they had over there. But for the assembly, it's not. But I will say, I know a lot of the ones that are elected in Queens, Brooklyn, and all of like the 5 boroughs. There's a level of Democrats that, we'll be forced to work with Democrats. And there are some here that have a level of common sense. I don't want to drop names, but there's some that have gone along with well. But what I'm really worried about is that there's the DSA. They're taking over the Western Queens area. This is the only assembly district as of now. That Shamsul Haka. He's the closest thing to DSA that's going to be running for here. There's a lot of conservative areas here, especially here. So I don't think DSA would have a viable pathway. But if they want to take it on, I'll probably beat them. But they're going to be taking over a lot of seats. I think it's estimated between 6 to 8. I think it's around there because in Western Queens, there's an Ecuadorian socialist. I always tell people she's an Ecuadorian socialist that took over for Zoran's seat. I'm an Ecuadorian conservative, or at least like a moderate. When I'm talking to voters, I vary a lot when it comes to policy. But there's a lot of them that are now going to be elected. And it's very sad to the state assembly, state senate positions, and hopefully not, but Congress. There might be one or two flips there for the DSA too. And so a lot of the moderate Democrats, they're having the most public battle of all time, and yet the GOP is asleep at the wheel. So I saw that this was an opportunity to really come in and show what we are capable of, know how to campaign, know how to use the social media. And I've been here for years. People know me here. I've been involved in multiple campaigns. People don't really see me here as the conservative or this or that. They just see me as the guy who's been getting involved and who actually gives a damn here. But we have to work with the moderate Democrats, knowing that they might not be able to unseat the incoming DSA candidates, the incoming socialists. Who else do they really have? Everyone else is going to be fundraising to primary them. And so let's just say if I win or when I win, I would be able to work with some of the moderate Democrats here, assuming that's the only choice that I have. And then, we can try to pass some bills or try to find ways where we could help each other out so that the DSA either grows less influential or that they're able to lose a couple of seats in 2 years from now.
Brandon, Zoran Mondani overwhelmingly won the New York City election, right? He had over 1 million votes. He ran on the ticket of affordability. I'm looking at his agenda and I don't see anything that actually provides affordability for the people of New York City, especially the hardworking, tax-paying, and people under the poverty line. Do you have anything that you in particular are running on? You made mention that the rent is too damn high, and I think everyone across New York City agrees with you. Is there anything in your agenda related to affordability?
Yes. Well, first, I starts with addressing the $12 billion deficit that the city has. I always tell people I would prioritize the needs of the community first, for the people that are here, for the people that have been here for a long time. We would address their needs first over anything else. I'm sure that there's a lot of budget cuts the mayor has already been forced to make. He had proposed a 9.5% property tax, which would not only impact 3 million residential units, but 100,000 smaller businesses too. And so, we would want to address that. And funny enough, part of that, they were trying to blame Eric Adams, but it has to do a lot with the progressive city council. The speaker, Adrienne Adams, or the former speaker, she's running at the top of the ticket with Kathy Hochul. And so I don't think they'll be able to get very much done, but we would start. I'll be like in opposition, or at least a different path, showing that hey, this is where we can make some cuts. These are programs, some of the non-profits here that are really, they're just vessels for the Democrat Party, vessels for the incumbents here. There's like a couple of foundations here. Pretty much all that they do, not all, but there's some, that they're just there as an extension to the electeds here. And then they all kind of funnel money. And so what we really want to do is audit a lot of these local groups, audit a lot of the organizations that we also have here, address the $12 billion deficit. But, it's a very complicated thing. But what Zoran had a campaign on is just impossible. And I think people are starting to learn that. One of the reasons why I had wanted to run, even knowing this wasn't going to be an open seat, and knowing that the Democrats are motivated to take back Congress, but you saw Zoran won with only 50.3%. I believe it's 50.3. Usually the Democrat gets 60 or 70% margins. Now it was like a little bit more complicated. It was Cuomo there. and Curtis. We didn't really have a real top of the ticket there to show what a one-on-one could have actually done. But Zoran barely squeaked by. They can call it a mandate, sure. But that popularity, that 50.3% is going to wane further and further and further down. People are already pissed off. And so we have the opportunity now to provide a different agenda for people, a different pathway forward. And we have to address the wasteless spending, especially done by the city council and the assembly here.
So, I mean, we often talk about strong tax bases, which I think is important for New York City, having a strong tax base. And that's what Zoran Mamdani is moving away from. He's talking about taxing the rich, taxing the elite. So, and you mentioned small business, which I think is really important. So when we talk about small businesses, how do we keep small business and big corporations from leaving New York? If that's his plan, how do we keep them here? And how do we keep them from leaving?
Well, one, you don't start by raising the property taxes. As I said prior, that would impact around 100,000 smaller businesses here. I know plenty of business owners here, including some of the bodega owners. They're going to be the ones affected by it. And what option do they have when they cannot pay bills? Well, they're either going to have to close down or they're going to have to fire some of their staff. And it's not attractive to own a business here. Maybe if you have like an online business or some type of marketing business, but if you want to have like a traditional storefront, whether it's a restaurant, anything, why would you want to go to Roosevelt Avenue or Woodside, Jackson Heights? Like these are the communities that are absolutely beautiful, and that we have to improve what we have here. And that starts by addressing the public safety, the quality of life, not raising taxes. That is for damn sure. And trying to find ways that we could work with the private sector so that we can alleviate costs in some sort of way and make it attractive for somebody to open up a storefront here. As I also said prior, if there's a crime, there's something happening outside of their block, even something as small as a crack on their road, maybe prostitution happening there. Guess what happens? People leave. If there's no space to park, I don't drive to Jackson Heights. I would usually walk there, especially when I campaigned in 2024. I would be knocking on doors. We knocked on 19,000 doors, got around 12,000 votes. But I would just walk there because trying to find a parking space, I would actually probably spend more time trying to find a parking spot than I would trying to actually walk and knock on maybe like a couple hundred doors. And I'm not even exaggerating, unless if I want to walk like another 15 minutes. But, it's not attractive to not only drive, but to have like a storefront here. And so we want to improve what we have here first and then make it so that people would want to open up a business. Make it so that they're not concerned about the cost of crime, about the cost of living, about taxes skyrocketing, and about Zoran potentially raising yours too. Because what are the rich going to do? This happened in California. They were losing billions of dollars. They changed their residency, and they're probably going to move. And even if 1/5 of them did that, 1/10 of them did that, the taxes end up going down to us. And so having Zoran's agenda here, like one of my opponents said, that's just not going to cut it. We need a different pathway forward here.
So speaking of taxes, one of the newest taxes that's in place is congestion pricing. That's actually doubled on top of the speed cameras, on top of, all of the cameras that they put in place. And it's really, in my opinion, they're just taxes. Where do you stand on congestion pricing? Because I personally believe that it started in Midtown Manhattan and it's going to end up in every borough in New York City. I think you're going to see that congestion pricing come throughout because there is a clear anti-car agenda in New York City. It starts at the state. It comes down to city council. What are your thoughts on congestion pricing, on flooding New York City with speed and all these other crazy cameras to just tax you even more?
No, I am against them fully. I always tell people this, but a lot of things, I can't say liberal policy as a whole has like a tendency, but especially the ones elected here, there's like experiments for different ways that they could raise funds, and then where those funds end up going to, God knows where. But if they start with the congestion pricing, which they already have, what's to stop them from doing it at other highways? They have speed cameras everywhere here. Like, I understand the need for people wanting to be safe and people not speeding around, but we all know the common people who are going to be paying for that. It's people like me. I had gotten I had gotten like a speeding ticket. Now I'm one of the slowest drivers ever, by the way. Anybody who drives with me knows that I'm not the very fastest driver. I drive an SUV, so I don't even have to drive fast anyway. And some of the roads that we also have here are extremely narrow. But I got one for going, I think 35. I'm like, that's pretty slow. I thought I was slow, but I guess I get like a little bit paranoid sometimes. Not like actually paranoid, but I'm like, did I speed past this one? Like I obviously read the signs very, very well, but I'm just an example of the average type of person that's going to be affected, and that has been affected by this. People pay hundreds of freaking dollars, and we know where that's actually going to. It's probably going to staffing, probably going to funneling money. Just you waste useless spending. They spend millions of dollars with the MTA here, where they have those brand new gates where it takes like 2 minutes. I was on 74th Street here. That's probably the most populated train station in the entire city, aside from Times Square and maybe Flushing Main Street. But there are people waiting for literally 2 to 5 minutes, and the door would open up. You would swipe or tap. The door would open up. You walk right through, and then it's the slowest. It's like the slowest closing, and then over and over and over again. And that's millions of dollars spent. So it's not just about how much they're taxing people, but also about how they're spending that money or wasting that money, pretty much.
So we talked about Roosevelt Avenue. You talked about Queens. You're a native of Queens. So in a sanctuary city like New York right now, New York City, which is a sanctuary city, what is your position on local law enforcement cooperating or coordinating or collaborating with ICE when it comes to illegal military age males or anyone that's illegal that committed a serious crime, even in a sanctuary jurisdiction? What are your thoughts on that?
Especially if they committed a serious crime while already being here illegally, I would be happy for them to cooperate and try to catch those people. That's a very, it's people say it's a complicated issue. It's a very polarizing issue now. Queens this is the most diverse assembly district in the entire state. There might be one or two more. This is a 32% Hispanic area. It's around 60% Chinese, and there's a lot of other ethnic groups that really go down. Like you walk just a couple blocks down, there's Nepali community, there's the Chinese community, there's the Hispanic. So you get a mix of everything pretty much. So you ask the average person walking down the 7th train here, what the average person wants. They don't want to see federal agents, what they would call acting to like a dictatorship. That's what people would see it as. I don't see it in that lens, but the average person taking the Q60 bus, the average person walking down the 7th train, they just want to be left alone, knowing that they don't have to worry about seeing the National Guard or ICE, or being worried that maybe some of their family, friends, these abuelitas, some of the, people that have been here for a long time that really haven't done wrong aside from coming here illegally. They've been here longer than I've been alive. Probably, I could probably say the same for all of us here. We all would probably know some people that have been here for a long time. They've really worked hard. And so what the average person wants, they don't want to feel like they're going to be bombarded. They don't want to see like federal agents out there, but they know, and I know, that we need a level of consequences. We need a level of enforcement here too. And I think a reasonable compromise, for for people that were not only here illegally, but for the ones that committed serious crimes or any level of crimes, that should be the first option. And for some, it's the only options. But that's a compromise that I would be willing to make, and I would easily be in favor of something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think the Democratic agenda of not cooperating with ICE, like having our court system and our police departments cooperate with ICE, is forcing them onto streets. And I think it's a bad play. I don't think they should be out and on streets policing, involved in municipal policing. I think it should be done. It should be done more notification process, the way it's been the last 30 years prior to all of the sanctuary city garbage coming into play. And I think that's it. It's really an incompetent play, I think, on things. Other thing, New York State recently passed a Clean Slate Act. So Clean Slate Act what it does is it wipes the slate clean for certain crimes after a period of time. I believe it's about 7 years, and some for pretty serious crimes. NYPD police officers under Andrew Cuomo, when he was the governor, they repealed the law called 50A. 50A, what it did is it made police officers' records publicly available. Now, I don't even know any cop that has a problem with their public record being available. The problem is that once they retire, that record remains available. So we're wiping the slate clean for criminals, but let's just say a cop, and I'm not even exaggerating here, had a minor disciplinary infraction. He was wearing white socks on duty. That would stay on his disciplinary record in retirement, in death, for eternity. There is no way where we're sealing any records of police officers. You have Eric Dim, who's been labeled as the most complained cop in the NYPD here. And he, till today, he served. He retired honorably. He has a good guy letter from the NYPD. But if he goes to get a job, the first thing they're going to do is Google Eric Dim's name, and they're going to look at his policing record. And although most of the things that are on his record, he was found not guilty of, received no discipline for, they remain a stain on him forever, even though they're just allegations. Would you support sealing the records of NYPD officers who retire honorably in retirement?
Yes, well, obviously, it would depend on the severity of what it is that they had done. But I would understand people's concerns about holding the police accountable. But I just think that that's an unreasonable approach. As you were saying, a lot of people who do crimes here, not only do they get released on cashless bail, but very oftentimes, there's no real consequences for them. So when you set that precedent, and then you further disable the cops, well, then this is the mess that you get yourself into. So I would definitely be open to a conversation. It would really depend on the severity of any actions done, but largely, yes, I would definitely be open to something.
Well, just so you understand, these are allegations, the majority of them, that have not been founded. And even the ones that are founded have been founded not in a court of law, by an administrative, they're not crimes. They're administrative infractions. If they were crimes, their records get sealed as per the state law. But they're not crimes. They're administrative infractions, and they remain for eternity. Like, just so you're aware, we could talk about it at a later date, but I think it's something that I believe, I believe Republicans and Democrats are missing the mark on. I don't think it makes logically, it makes no sense to me, like for it to remain on anyone's record. So, but that's another thing. So sorry to go. I know Eric has got a question. Yeah.
It's all good.
No, I actually love having that conversation. I could go down this rabbit hole for hours, because if you look at the weight of things and scale it, it's quite interesting, right? If you're just a resident of New York City or New York State and you commit a crime under the Clean Slate Act, you have a second chance in life. But as a New York City police officer, if you have an administrative infraction or just an allegation, that stains not just your career, but it's held against you for your entire life. I often say, thank God I'm single, because in retirement, if I was a young lady and I was out there in the dating pool, and if I met Eric Dim, I would Google his name first and say, wow, he was the most complained cop. Oh, my God. So my point is, this 50A, which is administrative, it doesn't just affect your career, it affects your entire life. And as John said, it affects your afterlife at the NYPD of trying to get a job and making you attractive. So I think if you look at the scale of things, we're not talking about crimes, we're talking about administrative infractions. So why should that be held against a cop? If we just go a little deeper into this, why should that be held against a cop? Why should, someone like myself, retired in 2022, in 30 years from now or 40 years from now, I'm an 80-year-old man, I'll still be the most complained cop for administrative allegations. What are your thoughts on that? Does that change the conversation at all, or you still take that position, which is fine? I'm just, I'm curious. I think it's good to have these conversations.
I appreciate that you had brought that up to me. I'm always been, an advocate for innocent until proven guilty, and the fact that these are alleged, what's to stop me from making complaints? And then if that stays on file, like that just gives me so much power, and there's no real consequences for me doing something like that. And so, I actually do support and I agree with everything that you are also saying. I appreciate you for also bringing that up because that helps me clear my mind up a lot on that for sure. Yeah.
Brandon, I'm just curious. Like my sisters are calling me, a lot of my friends are calling me, and the majority of them live in Staten Island, and they're telling me that the roads still aren't cleared, that they have no idea where sanitation is. We have a person on the chat right now saying Dyker Heights still is not cleared in Brooklyn. What's your neighborhood looking like?
Mass Fest here, I will say it's night and day compared to the first time around. Zoran really had the second chance to do that. Not many mayors or many electeds have like a second or even like a third chance to prove it. Because the first time around, we saw just how incompetent that they were. Sometimes I'll have to drive for work for like 45 minutes. No one wants to drive on like the Van Wyck anyway, but just imagine driving on that with so much ice and just snow, and it was just a mess. I think during those 2 weeks, I only drove like 2 or 3 times. I really just wanted my car to stay here because I would have to find a parking spot, and that would take, as I said, like a long time. But the roads are much clearer here. I know there's other parts that really haven't been plowed through. Although I will say, I actually have seen the plow trucks come by, partly because I spent 2 or 3 hours shoveling, and oftentimes I'll be out there multiple times, and so I'm bound to see it. If like I don't see it, then I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But I did see some of those trucks. I saw at least two pass by my block, but the problem is that they would push the snow back anyway. I see these other countries that have much a better system, and that's something that we should have here. That's part of the infrastructure that I was also talking about. People shouldn't have to be worried about, hey, there's a snowstorm coming tomorrow, but the trucks are going to push the snow back to my parking spot anyway. We want to improve what we have here so that people don't move, and we're seeing people flee the state in droves. They still are, but in terms of the snow, I will say the roads are much clearer. I know because I would walk a lot. I actually bike a lot. I would bike 3 to 4 hours every week. I obviously haven't been able to do that now, but I would often look for different terrain, other paths that I could actively ride on or drive on. And I see a lot more of that now than I did the first time around. But to be honest with you, if the mayor had messed it up twice, then people don't have to get the second chance to prove it. But I have heard from other types of communities that their streets haven't been plowed through. I will say most of mine has, and a lot of that just came from the people here. They really came out. They were shoveling the snow here, and it's the community doing that, and then everything else assisting with that.
Listen, outstanding. I think you have some great ideas. I think you're passionate, you're super impressive, intelligent. So, in your position, I mean, listen, I just want to say, I lived in Queens a long time as an adult. I had an apartment in Astoria, by the way. Some of the best years of my life. Astoria is awesome. I love Queens. Queens is a great borough. I think it's quite sometimes overlooked, right, by Manhattan and Brooklyn. I think Queens is awesome. I had a great time. So if you win, and you shall win, what does Queens look like in 4 years from now?
Well, in 4 years from now, I would definitely like to say that we would have improved quality of life, safer and cleaner streets, better arts and culture programs there. There's already a lot here, but we want to improve the arts and culture programs so that people that are young, people going there can actually benefit from the resources there. Maybe they could be connected with some business owners, success stories, mentoring programs, so that people have the opportunity. They can live here, be here, thrive here, and then they don't. Hopefully, I would like to say that the youth would have a much better path. People my age would also have a much better path, and we will have better public safety here too. But there's only so much that we could fight when it comes to fighting the governor and fighting the mayor. But if we elect more people like me, regardless of party, obviously I don't want to see more Democrats running the state. It's a one-party city as is. But assuming that we have moderates, conservatives, and independents. We have more of us here. We can really take the fight to the DSA, the socialists, or like the Zorons running here, because they're just a bunch of opportunists. I don't think half of them actually believe in the stuff that they're saying. I hear that almost every other Hispanic here, by the way, except for Jessica Ramos and maybe like one or two others. I think she's the only one. Every single one of them here is either a DSA dues paying member, they affiliate with the DSA, they actively work with them, or they're as progressive, they're as close to progressive as they are DSA, which is, for some, it's the same thing anyway. They're going to be voting on the very same policies anyway. And so this red alert here, we don't have like a balance here. We're seeing they use the identity politics to win. And yet I can tell you now, most of my parents, most of my family, regardless of skin, color, political beliefs, not many people actually believe in that types of policies. What I see is just a bunch of college politics, a bunch of high school politics, and then they're starting to take over. And then the problem is that they get so much funding, they get so much support, they get so much resources, and they also have the party name. So I can't blame people. I will never vote for those candidates, but when it comes to a one-on-one race, we have a quality candidate problem. And that's something that I'm also looking to fix here too. Here in Queens, I would often vote, and I don't know who the down ballot is. Usually it's a nameless, a faceless candidate, and it's been like that for such a long time. People, they just maybe put their name up, they hope and pray, maybe the trends will go in our way, and they get 32%, they get 20%, they get maybe 35% by doing the bare minimum. So our base is going to come out here to vote. The average person has a level of common sense, but it's my job and candidates like me to knock on those doors, knock on another couple thousand doors, and tell them why we are not only the moderate, the common sense, but the best option possible. And then hopefully it would encourage other people to run, motivate them to run, knowing that they would actually have a pathway to victory here, and that they could just speak their mind. What also helps us out is that I don't have to listen to the Democrat overloads. They're not telling me what to say and do. Their party is, they have like a bunch of puppets there. There's no strings on me. I can say and do as I please. And I'm going to continue to do that. And I hope to encourage a long list of populist candidates that will do the very same thing. That's how I see Queens in 4 years from now.
Brandon, like the thing when I look at New York City politics is there's a portion that's organized, and then there's a portion of politics that's completely unorganized. When you look at the Democrats, they, their platforms are insane, their agenda is insane, but they stick together. They're well organized, they're well funded, they help each other out. When I look at Republicans, especially elected Republicans, they do nothing to recruit, to try to bring in. What are you going to do when you get elected? You're going to play defense, right? You're going to play defense. You're not getting anything passed. You can't get anything passed. Like you already said, there's nothing that you're going to be able to accomplish other than you could bring up a farm team and try to be able to break that supermajority. And then at that point, then maybe we could start to get some things passed when you break the supermajority. Until there's a supermajority broken in the Assembly and the Senate, I mean, Republicans are useless. And what I'm watching from elected Republicans is they don't help guys like Brandon Castro out, who got 40% last time he ran and probably could have got over if he would have got some media attention, if he would have got some funding, and if we would have got some help. Door knockers, and if other people would have used their platform to help Brandon Castro, you would have had another seat already. But because of that, because we're completely unorganized, you don't get that. And to me, I think that's the biggest failure in the Republican ticket and as well as in the conservative ticket, because I do believe they should be working together. And often they're not. We saw that in the mayoral election. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, well, I watch people get elected and they're like, they sit there and oh, no, I'm going to help. And then what do? They use their platform to build themselves and to play patty cake with the Democrats. And they play patty cake with the Democrats, so the Democrats don't run to take their seat. And that's the biggest problem for me in New York, with New York politics. And so, I like what you're saying here, But I just want to ask you again, are you going to help other candidates get elected? Viable candidates. It doesn't mean that everybody that runs, just because I came out and said I'm going to be a Republican and I'm going to do this, doesn't mean you should get behind them. But are you going to help to farm other candidates in Queens is my question.
I'm very happy that you asked me that. I haven't left this assembly district in like the last 2 or 3 years. I ran in 2024. We got a very large volunteer base, but I've helped out multiple candidates. Last year, I helped out Ramses Frias. I was his campaign manager for City Council District 25. He's a fantastic candidate. He's also going to be running for assembly again too. So we'll not only be the Hispanics, but we'll be the moderate, common sense fighters here against the DSA takeover. If they take over our seats, it's done. It's done. They're going to try to keep on taking over further. But I've helped him out. I also helped out John Healy, who was a City Council District 26 candidate. I helped out another candidate by the name of Phil Wong. I got involved in his primary. He was a Democrat. Well, he is one, but he was the best out of the other 3 options by far. He had also supported me in my original run in 2024. So I have a bipartisan base. I've also been endorsed by the former Democrat council member, Robert Holden. I'm the only candidate in all of the 5 boroughs. You could look at Staten Island, Southern Brooklyn, the only one that has an in-district Democrat backing me. And he was just term limited at the start of this year. And that's 1/3 of my assembly district, by the way. Maspeth, it's been under Bob Bolden's reign for the last 8 years. And his name is very important here. The same with Elmhurst. And so I was knocking on doors the last couple of years for both parties. Although I will say, when I say both parties, it's the most right-wing or the most conservative, moderate, common sense candidates you will ever meet. There is nothing, or there's barely anything progressive, aside from maybe standing up against the system. But that's something that everybody has in common anyway, the populist left and right. But I've been not only helping out candidates, mentoring them, but I'll continue to do the same thing. As I said prior, what's an advantage for me with the Republican Party line is that there's no strings on me. I won't be elected as a Democrat, and then now I'm getting told by this or that, you have to vote this way. We're going to fund your next primary. You have to vote with the DSA. You have to get along with this faction, this faction, this faction. There is no faction here. As a matter of fact, the factions that we have are splintered enough as is. Well, they'll have no choice. They're going to fall in line, and I'll easily help out any candidate. Of course, as long as it's a quality candidate, there's always going to be some placeholders, but as long as they have a fighting chance, a sense of drive, a sense of passion, I've been helping them out, and I'm going to continue to help them out too, every day of the week.
In my opinion, the top three things that would be of most concern for residents of Queens, and I know I lived in Queens, I was telling you, would be affordability, right? Which is, the apartments in Queens are just astronomical. Public safety, obviously, I think that's probably number one. And then quality of life, right? You talked about Roosevelt Avenue. So right now, at this point, I think some stuff he's saying is fantastic, but people, especially politicians like Zohran Mamdani, have made all these promises to just fall flat in their face. Right? I don't agree with what position he was on, but these are the promises he made to his voters, and they already fell flat in their face. So why should the people in Queens trust you to fight their concerns in Albany when Albany's, at this point, broken? Why should they trust you to fix it?
Well, I think that they should trust me. This was a point that I had brought up like a few times, but I won't be, I'm not a puppet. They're not going to be pulling strings on me. They cannot threaten to primary me. There is no GOP primary. I'll be the only candidate, assuming that I win, and I will win. They cannot primary me. They could try to fund an opponent all that they want here. But I had gone into this knowing that I was going to be going up against an incumbent, third time one, and now it's an open seat. And so I'm ready for any fight. I really don't care. I've been doing this my whole life. There's nothing comfortable about what I am doing now, putting my name, putting my family's name on the line like this. I've been doing this my whole life, especially during college. That's when we're really trying to learn and grow. And then I had put myself out there. I'm sure if you look up my name, there's like a Queens College article about some things that they didn't like that I said, but I never said anything controversial. Just that identity politics tends to be very, what you would call tribalistic, and that people often think in hive minds rather than actually speaking. That's as controversial as I got. I never got any more controversial than that. But everyone knows during the times of 2016 to 2022, some of the toughest times to not only be a moderate but a conservative person. The average person, the average student, I can promise you, doesn't fall in line with all these progressive stuff. But they end up having to do that because of their friend groups. They don't want to get ostracized. What is the actual benefit of speaking out? So I would encourage people to not only speak out, but hey, I am a viable option. We have the bipartisan platform. I have Democrat support in District 1 too. And not any other candidate in all of the 5 boroughs can say that. I'm the only one. The only one. You speak to any other candidate, they cannot tell you that. They could tell you that they got some Democrat from miles away that would maybe be willing to back them. Mine lives just like 10 minutes away. And I'm very, very friendly with some of the incumbents here. And I haven't really left here. But why they can also trust me, as I was saying prior, I'm not a puppet to the establishment. I've always been a challenge in them. I'll continue to do the same thing. And as we see the most public battle of all time, the establishment or the moderate Democrats versus the DSA, the Zoran Army, the socialists, they're spending hundreds and thousands on very heated primaries. There's also a primary for the state senate seat here, which Raga, the reason why this was an open seat, he announced that he was going to run for it. And it's a DSA versus a DSA. Stephen Raga is a DSA dues paying member, and I'm sure if they had reached out to him, he would accept that. He would accept that backing. He's a puppet, just like a lot of the other ones here. They kind of use these other foundations and the progressive squads here. They get along with them, whatever the overlords say, and they don't actually speak up on behalf of their base, on behalf of the people that live here. A lot of the staffers, I'm not going to give them any flack. They're very talented. A lot of the assembly staffers are for any office. They're very, very good people. They actually want to help out. But it's the public figures. It's the public heads. They're the ones that are making deals. They are the ones that are not actively speaking up for us. They're just there to position themselves higher. And I would do my best to get along with the moderates here, because after the DSA wins a couple of seats, they're either going to toe that line, or they would have somebody here who has a lot of influence, and that we can actually work together, build up a different brand. We'll be the Queen's candidates. It won't just be a left or right, but a forward pathway. We'll be the forward candidates, rather than it being a left or right, because we have no other choice here. We know that there's a lot of seats where our party doesn't stand a chance. Even the most quality, the best funded campaign would get 30%, maybe 20%, maybe 35%. But I'm the only one that has a pathway to win. And once we flip the seat, we can work with a lot of the moderates and any insurgent candidates that wants to challenge them, and we'll take over those primaries. We are going to beat them, and then that would increase the leverage and pool that I have anyway.
Brandon, I've been doing a lot of reading about the founding of New York City early on, and election integrity has been an issue in New York City the entirety of its existence. Former NYPD Chief Mike Marino asked a question. Mr. Castro, how do you feel about voter ID? What are your thoughts about identifying voters? Should voters have to be identified at a booth? It's something that happens in most states and most cities throughout the country. Here in New York, however, we have politicians that claim that asking for identification is racist. What are your thoughts on that?
I support voter ID fully. If you were to look at the public polling, sorry, I had like a sneeze before, and it doesn't want to come out, so my nose has that a tickly feeling. But so it's a very popular position. If you were to look at the public polling, the average person supports it. If I were to speak to the average person walking down the 7 train here, taking the Q60 bus, walking down Queens. Any street here in Queens, in this assembly district, they can also tell you that they probably aren't largely supportive of that. We saw Zoran had 2 forms of ID that you would need just to be a shoveler. And if you go vote, it's the easiest thing in the whole world. Now, it should be accessible to people, but we know that people who care about actively voting, you have a whole year. You have a whole year. Everyone has a level of resources to get it. If you go to the DMV, you would need to have multiple forms of ID. They would ask you for 5 forms of like a mailing address. Even I have a hard time getting that. But this is not nearly as complicated as that. This is not nearly as complicated as opening up a bank account or doing 95% of other things that you would need some level of documentation for. People have the duty to vote, and if they have a whole year to take the responsibility for it. And I would even accept a compromise on that. If people want to give a time frame until something like that is implemented, okay, great. Let's give people the time to get these resources. Not doing it at the last minute. I'm fully supportive of voter ID. I think it's a bipartisan thing. I see that they're patching that on. I think that they're going to be passing that on the national level too. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I think we should have a level of that here for sure.
Well, a shout out to retired Chief Mike Marino. Outstanding question. I think it's a great question. And I don't understand why people get so upset about showing ID. It's just your identity. What's the big deal? I mean, you show ID for the most simplest things, and you kind of alluded to it, right? You go to a supermarket, you go to a bodega, you want to buy a beer, you want to buy cigarettes, you show ID. What's the big deal? It's a small issue, but a bigger picture, right? So you have to ask, well, like, what's behind the curtain there? So I want to thank you for coming here today. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to speak to people and give us your platform. If you could tell us, where do people find you? How can they help you raise money? And also, if you could tell us, other than that, if we can have a little fun, tell us a little bit about yourself, other than politics. What are some of your hobbies? What are you into? What's life looking like for you? Other than politics.
Sure. I apologize if there's some noise here. Someone's shoveling really, really hard over here. So I hope that my mic is not.
It sounded like they were hitting your window. No, it's all good.
Yeah, I hope that the mic is not capturing that. But yeah, people that don't really know of me, you can check me out. I have every single social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. My name is Brandon Castro. You can look me up on the other 3, Brandon Castro NY. I would post every day. That's something that Zoran did very well. Successful candidates. The DSA model is to look above a 6 out of 10. Look good, sound good, and then naturally grow an organic base. I've been doing that the last couple of years. I have an organic base. I have Democrats. Even there's some progressives that have liking to me too. Now I don't know if they don't really know fully, why, but I think it's because we're like in. It's kind of like James Dean. He was a rebel without a cause, but we have a cause. It's to take over the establishment here and to actively fight back. And I think that's a very attractive message. And I have the ability, I have the confidence to do it. I have the bipartisan backing, and we're going to get a lot more backing. I just announced a Democrat former council member, but we're going to have a lot of other local groups, a lot of other local people here. The people part of my campaign team live here. I'm not sure if either of you saw my campaign video, the announcement video. That was filmed by people who live here. A guy who lives in Woodside, just like a couple of blocks away. He had a $3,000 camera, mic. I forget the name of the specific thing, like a tripod. He had like the whole deal. People who live here are a part of this. Campaign. It's people who have a sense of passion and pride and actually want to see change here. And to the people that don't know much about the background that I have, I graduated from a vocational school, from Queens Technical High School here. I graduated from a CUNY college. I did around 5 years. I have a bachelor's in history and political science in CUNY Queens College. I spent a lot of that time learning and growing, getting a lot more confidence. I was a career development chair there, meaning I helped out people with the resume building, interview prep, applying for jobs. So this is something that I've been doing. I'm not just all talk where I'm like, oh, okay, this guy looks and sounds good, but no experience. I've been doing this for years. I've been involved in multiple campaigns. I was a part of the winning campaign for Phil Wong for his city council primary. That was a very huge upset here because we had to go up against a candidate by the name of Dermot Smith, who raised $1.2 million, endorsed by every Democrat known to mankind, endorsed by every single union. He had every single super PAC. Well, not every single super PAC, but he had $1.2 million, and we won. We did around 16,000 doors for his campaign. It helps that I also live here and that I ran previously, so people know me here. I got involved in other campaigns on the GOP side of things here too. I was knocking on doors. When I ran in 2024, I knocked on 19,000 doors. We'll do 50,000 doors. Not only will we have the funding to do it, but we'll have the support and we have the manpower. I've had people everywhere canvassing for all sorts of conservative candidates the last year. And that was only during a city council year. The sky's the limit here for us now. And if people want to support me, they can look up my social media platforms. If you can also contribute, if you can also donate, the links are inside of, I believe, every single page of mine has a bio there where you could just access the link to donate. If you live inside of the assembly district, so if you live anywhere in Woodside, Maspeth, Elmhurst, and the little bit of Jackson Heights that we have, your contribution can get matched from times 8 to times 12. So if you donate to me, even something as small as $10, that will turn to $100, $120. If you know people that live here, spam it out, send it out to them. Tell them something as low as $5, $20 will go a long way for me, so that we can put up the fight. And I do not have a primary. There's a three-way primary here. They're going to be spending money. We'll be sitting on cash. I'll be continuing to knock on doors, do every event, get people excited about Republican for once. When does that actually happen? You have a local campaign and it sounds like they're about to go to sleep every time they speak. I'm talking about Queens at least. But here we have the passion, the energy to do it. And we want to fire people up, regardless of what their political background is. Everybody is welcome here. This is a campaign that welcomes everyone, as long as you have a sense of common sense and you have the ability to talk to people and not just immediately insult them. That's what I've always been about here. We can win this seat. We will win. This is I firmly believe I am one of the best candidates to have an open seat here. Others will just be a placeholder, maybe raise 5,000, and then that's it. They get some basic number. But we have a guaranteed base of support here. We're going to get that extra 5 to 10% that we need to win, which is a lot of the Cuomo coalition, a lot of the people that voted for Curtis, and a lot of the people who might not like Trump, but they especially don't like the local candidates here who are DSA, and what Zoran's doing is absolutely terrible. I am the option. I'm not just a throwaway. We will win. We are going to win. And I encourage everybody, support. I just went on like a long tangent there, but please, I need everyone's help.
You didn't tell us something else about you then. What are you into? What are your hobbies besides politics?
Oh, sure. Well, I go to the gym a lot. I know I can outbench Zoran easily, including a lot of those that were also throwing the snow pellets. I go to the gym a lot. I'm very big into cycling. It's been kind of hard to do that now. And to be honest, I've kind of taken like a very small break, but I'm very passionate to being active, going to the gym a lot. I'm a huge fan so I do collect a lot of vinyl records. I'm a big music guy. Again, I have to sneeze again. I haven't been able to sneeze like a single time. I'm just waiting for it to come out. But I'm like a huge fan of like the rock and roll, like that. I'm not sure if you can tell by my hair. It actually helps when I'm also campaigning because I haven't changed my style. Right, I haven't changed my style in years, so it's kind of like Curtis's beret, except I don't even need a beret. Whether it's the summertime, whether it's 0 degrees, this thing is always staying up, and so people see me from like a mile away, and they're like, "Oh, it's him." I'm like, "Yes, it is." So I'm like a huge fan of like rock and roll music, any type of music, pretty much. Like I wanted to have a professional corner here, but if I were to show you the rest of my place, it's just a bunch of vinyl records, history stuff, like a bunch of Johnny Cash. I have almost every single Elvis Presley record ever printed. A bunch of older.
You're an old soul, brother. You're an old soul, man. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. That's always been something that, I'm not sure what it is, but growing up, I was always a big fan of Queen. My father, he was a DJ, he was an MC. And so I would listen to everything. My grandfather actually came here in 1977, the week before Elvis Presley died on August 10th. He came here to see him. He still has the hair, by the way. So I think I'm good. I hope. But he came here in 1977 the week before Elvis Presley had passed away. He came here to see him, and he's been here ever since. He came here the legal way, by the way. I wanted to point that out. He didn't just come here, but it took a long time. But my grandfather is like a huge fan. But we love the culture here. I don't think there's anything wrong about appreciating the American culture. I am a Hispanic too. I love the Spanish culture, but I'm like the best of both worlds. I have the most Spanish name of all time, but if you were to listen to my playlist, you'd be like, is this guy 85? So I would like to think that gives us that appeal that we can, when I'm talking to people, I talk to them about this daily. People just know me as the Elvis Presley guy. And my gym over here, there's this app called Rockbot, so you could actively connect, and they don't know that it is me doing it, but I would play some of the old school stuff. Like, hey, I'm trying to lift over here, and I'm just very, very quiet about it, trying to get others to give me like a thumbs up. But yeah, that's basically all about me. I didn't want to talk about that too much, and I want people to know what my campaign is about here, but that I'm also a human being.
Look, but before we let you go, just one big issue I think on the state that we haven't touched on is
Sure.
medical freedom. So a few years back, New York State has removed parental rights in regards to religious accommodations. Religious accommodations have been removed for kids to forego getting certain vaccinations when going to school or any vaccinations at all. You're probably well aware, I had to leave my career over being denied a religious accommodation by the NYPD. However, in Florida, to get my kids a religious accommodation, all I had to do was walk into my state office and say, I'm here for a religious accommodation for my daughter. And they said, here you go, sir. Here it is. And yet in New York State, we don't follow the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII. We don't follow the First Amendment of the Constitution. And the NYPD and other New York City agencies decided that they had the ability to tell people who were religious and who wasn't. For example, we had two brothers submit religious accommodations. They both grew up in the same household. They were twins. They both wrote the same exact thing on their religious accommodation. One was granted, the other one was denied, and so on and so forth. What are your stance on religious accommodations and following New York State human rights law as well as Title VII and the Civil Rights Act? Do you believe that the state could force you to be vaccinated for anything at all, or do you believe medical freedom is a choice and religious rights should be respected?
I don't believe in mandates. I was against them in 2020. I was against them. There was a lot of people that had gotten fired. There was a lot of teachers, anybody, whether you were a police officer, a teacher, some sort of public servant. If I recall correctly, I had gotten an email from CUNY, from the they were telling us, this was like a couple of years back, but that you would be likely dropped from your classes if you do not get vaxxed. And there was people like me. I had never gotten COVID before, by the way. Maybe I have. Maybe I'm just an asymptomatic person, so maybe I got like a runny nose. That was COVID. I have no clue. But all I know is that I had never gotten it before, so I'm sure I would have been fine whether I was vaccinated or not. But I don't believe it should be mandated for people. And then not only that, but when they had also mandated, they closed everything down. So how are you expected to function? They were also closing down gyms. This whole city was locked down. This one was, as I'm also saying this, it's kind of like I'm reading from a book. This is stuff that happens in like a freaking movie, not stuff that we would actively have to live through in the 21st century here. And so I do not support mandates. I would hope that we don't get another lockdown ever. And anybody who was fired for those exact same reasons should either be compensated or rehired back. I think it's unfair. It's unjust. And I fully respect people's choices for that. I think we could encourage people. That's great. We should continue having conversations. I understand those that, would feel just a little bit safer if most of the people around them were also vaccinated. But I don't think it should ever be a mandate. People should have the choice especially never a choice between their livelihoods and doing that. That sounds like an authoritarian government. That does not sound like New York City, which claims to be extremely progressive. It's regressive.
Brandon, I want to thank you so much for being clear and answering the questions today. And you're doing a great job. We really appreciate it. And I think it's super impressive at 26 years old that you've dived so deep into politics and that you care. It really shows compassion, that you're a true New Yorker. And that's what we need. We need to get back to the grassroots, real New York. So I want to close with this question. Last question I want to ask you today is, in this position, you're young and be in politics, but let's put politics aside. What do you want people to say after you win? What do you want people to say that, hey, what type of leader will you be? Like, what type of position will you take? What do you want people to say about you when you win and you have a legacy? What type of leader will you be?
I want them to know that I'm an honest man, and that I'm one who speaks up, and that I speak my mind. I don't have to toe a particular party line. I'm sure that we can go into thousands of other types of conversations here, either about the national party on either of the parties here. We know that they don't really serve us well. They're either spineless or they make false campaign promises. And this is on both sides. And so I don't have to toe the party line. I just wanted to know that I'm an honest man. I speak my mind and I care about what I say. If I'm saying something publicly to somebody, it's going to be an extremely consistent thing. And so I just want people to know that. And I would hope that I encourage people and gave them a level of hope. Not only hope to run, but to also speak up. I always tell people this: the way that I act, the way that I move is always for the long term. There's always going to be short-term loss, short-term gain. If you go through with speaking out, there's a lot of things I think people should still be quiet about, learning how to navigate, and then putting themselves in that position so that they can make that action rather than just talking. Because we all know if we end up talking too much, we end up splitting up a lot of support that we also could have, and that people wouldn't be able to actually function. We have like a lot of right wingers who run here. It's the most Texas or Oklahoma campaign of all time, but you're not going to win like that. You have to appeal to the other types of voters, to the demographics. You have to appeal to what the average person is actively thinking about. And I will have conversations with anybody. And I just want people to know me as not only some type of bipartisan leader, but one who goes against the grain. I've been doing that my whole life. I'm going to continue to do that. And I hope that people get a level of hope. I hope that they get a level of like a boost to know that there are a bunch of us out there. And that I'm one of the very few. I believe I'm the only Gen Z candidate in the entire city this year running for any state office. Now, I want someone to correct me if I'm wrong, because I would definitely like to meet that person. But I believe I'm the only one. And the only one on the Republican Party ticket is an even rarer thing. So I want people to know that there's a bunch of us out there, and that we have the ability to fight back. And I want to be that symbol.
All right, awesome. Listen, thanks for coming on today. We'll definitely get Ramsey Frias on here, and I think let's take back Queens, baby. That's I think that's what it is. We are gonna extend the invite to one of your opponents, Sam Shell Hawk, as well. I don't know if he's gonna be so apt to come on here and sit down and answer questions with us, but we'll throw the invitation out there. Let's see what happens, So any closing words before we let you get out of here?
I will say I actually know Shamsul personally. Well, I know every single Democrat running. Like when I say that, I've been here for years. I don't just help out one party line, and I just stay in like my own lane. I've been everywhere. I know all of the Democrats running. Shamsul and I both were part of the University Student Senate, USS for short. It's like CUNY student government, and I was elected one of only 3 on behalf of Queens College in 2023. And I know actually it was only 2, but there was an extra role. But only 2 delegates, and I was one of the only 2. And then and I know he was one. I believe he was a USS president in 2001. I was, but we met, through our connections through there. And he's the president of the Bangladeshi police group. And he's not the only candidate running. There's a Nepali leader by the name of Somnath Gimair. I don't think he actually has I don't think he actually has a policy. He's just a Nepali guy who cares about getting people involved in civics. Okay, I mean, if you're a Democrat and if he wins, against an average conservative, he can probably win off the most uninspiring campaign I have ever seen. And then there's another guy by the name of Patrick Martinez. He's progressive. He's a community board 2 member, and I believe he's going to be backed by the county. So if there's ever a favorite to win that race, it's probably going to be him. Not even Shamsul. He's the only one that made an actual policy position. But there's another guy. I expect to see his name, Patrick Martinez. I expect to see his name. He's a nephew of Elizabeth Crowley, as far as I'm aware. And she lost against the one who backed me, Bob Holden. So she lost. Both of the Crowleys lost, and we're going to beat them again. And he's not, he has the level of community backing, but not as much as I do. I'm the only candidate of the 4 that has any influence in the southern part. This is where I spend most of my time campaigning for candidates on both parties. I have an endorsement that comes from the southern part here, and then we're going to go toward the north, get all the connections that I have, knock on 50,000 doors, and win. Just know, everybody hearing this, get involved. You can canvass for me. It'll be like a while now. We're still in the petitioning portion, but just know that this is serious. I know everybody running. I know where they're going to be campaigning on, and I know where we can hit them very, very hard. So, it's going to be
Brad,
fun.
listen, thank you so much for coming on today. It's an hour and 20 minutes. I think you really laid out your platform, and you're a gentleman and super intelligent, impressive. I'm not sure if you could see the chat. I know I think you're on your phone, but you got some great support here from our friends and listeners, and they definitely like you, which I think is pretty cool. So I wish you lots of luck, man. I tell you, I love Queens. Like I said, I had an apartment in Astoria. You want to talk about the best food? Queens has the variety. I mean, there's blocks in Queens on 30th Avenue store. You could get Colombian food, and you could get Thai food, and you could get whatever you want on the same block. Talk about versatility. So awesome borough. Thank you so much. Be safe out there, and we really appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Thank you guys very much. It's been fun.
All right, Brandon. Talk to you soon, brother. Good luck. Let us know if you need anything.
Take care.
Keep that hair too.
Yeah. All right, that was it, people. That was Brandon Castro. I think a bright young man. I think definitely has a huge shot to win. Just needs a little push over. I mean, he already got 40% in his last election. It's huge. So, I think definitely exciting things. We'll definitely get Ramsey Frias on here as well. The next one, like I said, the next Wednesdays that are coming up, they're going to be all guests. We are going to bring some NYPD cops on as well. But, we're back into election season. So not like we ever really left. We had a couple of weeks off. So,
I was just saying, when is that season?
Yeah.
Is there a start already?
Yeah, so we're back into that, but yeah, no, I think it was a good conversation, and we got to, it is what it is, man. This is the fight. The fight in New York is the national fight, and it's going to be the fight going across the country. Socialists are moving hot and heavy. They have taken over the Democratic Party, and I mean, if nobody believes that, that's exactly what happened. They control the Democratic Party now. Socialists used to be their own independent group. They were more like independents. They were a smaller group. They didn't have as much clout as the Republicans and the Democrats. But if you haven't noticed, in the last 4 years, they now control the Democratic Party. So if you want to win, if you don't want this country to turn into a Marxist hellhole, I think it's about time we start electing some conservative, moderate Republican candidates.
John, we're not there yet.
Yeah,
we're not there yet.
Well, maybe in New York City, maybe in Minnesota, maybe in LA, maybe in Boston, maybe in all our major cities. But again, it's just because of it's because it's honestly because of the lack of knowledge of civics in America. It's because of the Republican Party's weak and they're corrupt, and there's a big problem that has to get solved. But I think we're there. We're on the ground floor of it. And I think what's happening in Brooklyn South, what you're seeing out of the Kings County Donald J. Trump Republican Club, I think you're going to start to see being replicated in other parts of the city and other parts of the state. And if we could take back New York, we could take back the whole country, and we could also keep the Republican Party in line doing what they promised they were going to do. So, that's the other thing. I'm not sitting here telling you, oh, you vote Republicans, they're perfect. No, they're cowardly, they're corrupt, they're cucks as well. They need to be held to their feet to the fire as well. So that's just what needs to happen. So, yeah, I don't know. Anything before we run out of here, Eric?
I just want to say, listen, man, I'm super impressed with Brandon. I mean, he's 26 years old, and he cares and shows compassion. I mean, I think about myself at 26. I went to Iraq at 23. And thinking back, I wish I would have dived more into politics to understand it. Not that I want to be a politician, but just to understand it. I think it would really correlate to what I was doing at the time. And I think most Marines or just any soldiers or any military don't really pay attention to the politics. You're called upon, you do your civic duty, and you don't really look into what the politics are. If people asked me back then why we're there, what we're doing, for me, the answer would have been to look, to have the back of my fellow Marine to my left and my right. And same thing for policing. At 26 years old, I was already a cop for 2 years at that time. I didn't pay attention to politics. I didn't pay attention to politics till the end of my career, and especially now with the Defiance Unfiltered. So shout out to him, man. I think that's a really, really good job. Impressive. So I think it was really cool. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, the chat got kind of weird today. They're really concerned, John, about your hair. They want to know if you want to get a transplant in Turkey. And talking about some people said he looked like from Men in Black. So I love the chat, man, because I'm trying to be serious here, see what's going on. But then,
I saw some funny shit. Yeah. But I'll be honest. If I had a full head of hair now, it's so easy. I'd shave my head. I could just drive in a convertible. I don't have to worry about it. My hair is always beautiful. It is what it is. I wake up in the morning, it's done. You
did have a good hairline.
You couldn't convince me to get hair back on my head. One of my friends went to Turkey. I think I was telling you guys, and now his hair is he just lets it go. He never does it anymore. He just shows everybody's hair. You could never tell. It looks awesome.
Really?
I'm like, dude, I'm not going to sit in a barbershop once a week. I'm just not. And spending
how much it cost?
Not a lot. Definitely not a lot of money. I don't know, a few $1,000, yeah. Mikey G.
If you want to compare, how much is a few thousand to get the hair, or how much a raises to keep shaving your head?
Yeah, but look, how much you get the hair, and then the upkeep, going to sit in a barbershop, the time. I mean, I'm not dealing with that crap.
I'm with you on that. That's the part I hate. I'll be honest, I like the experience of sitting in the barber. They put the hot towel. I just don't like the idea that sometimes you got to be there for 45 minutes or an hour. I want to get in and get out. I got things to do.
I got too much shit to do. I don't even need to deal with it. I want a haircut. It takes me 3 minutes. I get in the shower. I put shaving cream on my head, and see you later.
At this point, you're so used to it, you probably do it without a mirror.
Yeah. No, I don't use a mirror. Yeah. And then I take cream after I get out of the shower. I take lotion. I rub my head. I see if I missed any spots. I shave the rest of it, and that's it. It's done.
Shining today.
So,
well, what do you think? I mean, John, I know at 26 years old, were you already delved into politics at that point? I think it's pretty impressive.
Not like him. No, not like him. No, I started watching it. I mean, I always paid attention a little bit, but definitely not like him. Not where I understood who's running, what policy platforms they're on. Like I said, I always kind of watch politics, but definitely not to his level. More when I was 30 years old is when I really started to take a real big interest in it. So yeah, definitely not at his age. No, it was too bad. I was working every day. I cared about girls and working every day. It was like we were already cops at that point. You know what I mean? So,
but that's my point. So the reason why I want to bring up the topic is because I think now that we realize everything, some people, I think we said it the other day, that some people say I don't want to talk politics, but now I realize everything is politics. Do you think, and this is my question, I wonder if anybody in the chat thinks so, friends and listeners, do you think that all cops should get some type of political class or just to understand the politics? Yes, be apolitical, but just to have a better understanding of it? Or do you think that we should just refrain from that? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it relates to cops at all. I think everybody in America should be.
That's what I'm saying. Well, anybody, yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with it. I think way before you ever become a cop, I think we should be involved in the political process. You know, what they did in this country is like, you know, politics used to be like the NFL. Politics used to be like the NBA or the MLB. Like everyone paid attention to it. Everyone watched debates. Everyone knew the platforms. Everyone knew everything that was happening. Those were like your first initial athletes. You know what I mean? And what they did is now we're confused and we care. People could tell me everything about what Kim Kardashian is doing. A talentless whore. I'm sorry, like that's what she is. Like she got famous from a porn. I'm like, I was like, why is Kim Kardashian famous? She's good looking. Why is she famous? She's famous because her mother released a porn, like a porn.
That was brilliant, by the way. That woman's brilliant.
Well, whatever. She might be, but like, what do people care about Kim Kardashian? What does she bring to society? Nothing. What is she talented in? She can't sing. Is she a good writer? No. Does she help people? No. Like, what is Kim Kardashian known for? She's known for a sex tape. You know what I mean? She's a good-looking girl, and she's known for a sex tape. But people know more about her than they do about what legislation they're dealing with, even though they're paying taxes every day, sending their kids to school. They don't know what the garbage their kids are being fed. And and it's disgusting, dude. Like, you know, like to me, and I always was like that. I was like, I don't give a shit what anyone on the Jersey Shore has to say about anything. I don't care what the Kardashian. I wouldn't even waste my time. My wife would be watching it. Like, I'm like, I can't watch this stuff. Like, I'm getting dumber sitting here. I can't listen to these people. They're retarded. Like, I'm just not. Like, these are the worst of us. And yet I was like, if you want to be famous in America, just be a moron. Be a moron, grab a camera, be dumb, say dumb shit. America loves dumb people. You'll be fine. Be someone like Brandon Castro, who wants to make a change. Be someone like Curtis Lewa, who wants to get homeless people off the street, who wants to help people. You know, nobody cares. It's like, no, I don't care about that, Mo. And it really starts from our youngest years. That's how we're raised. That's how we're trained in this country. And I don't think it's exclusive of cops. I think cops are probably, when it comes to politics, they're probably the dumbest people I've ever spoke to in my life. And because they literally black it out of their head. What do you want me to do, Mo? What do you want me to do? You know, it's crazy. Like, you know, and you're the one that's probably gonna hang the most for anything that happens. You're gonna listen to these morons tell you to go break up a family who's walking down the block because they're not 6 feet apart, and then guess what? You're losing your job and you're on the front page of the paper, and you know, like, should cops be involved in it? Absolutely, they should. But I think it's even bigger than that. Everybody should.
No, I agree, and I think the biggest problem that I always find, and you probably hear the same thing, right? Is voter apathy, right? When people don't vote, and usually you get the response, like I hear from people, like, does it really matter? Like, does it make a difference? And that's what most people think. And I guess the reality is it does make a difference, right? Like most people have the idea that why even vote? Does it make a difference? And it does, especially what I've learned over time is on the local level, right? It really does make a difference. And paying attention to what's going on in your local politics, that really is the biggest impact on your life when it comes to government, is local politics. And I think most people kind of deviate from that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So I've been reading all these testimonies from 1845 in a police corruption scandal called the Lexow Committee. So I've been doing that like every day, like 2-3 hours a day. And so Jason's asking, you know, I don't know why Democrats are going so hard for illegals, because that was always what they've been doing, Jason. Like, that's the thing. So in the opening of the Lexow Committee, it's testimony after testimony after testimony of Republican watchers. Like, you go there to watch the votes to ensure there's no funny business happening with the votes. Right. And so what would happen is Tammany Hall, who were Democrats, they controlled the election process in New York City. Right. And what was New York City at the time? It was a growing city. There were all these immigrants coming in, Jews, Italians, Germans, Irish. And so what Tammany realized was, hey, we could be unbeatable. We just got to keep these immigrants voting Democrat. And so what they were doing is they were paying Democrats. They were paying immigrants, whether they were legal or illegal, it didn't matter. And the police, because they were appointed by Tammany, and Tammany controlled most of it, what they would do is anytime a Republican watcher came out, they would just send them out. They're like, no, you can't be here. And they're like, wait, no, it says in election law I could be here. No, you can't be here. Get out of here. I'm going to lock you up. Some cases, they even locked them up. And then as the testimony goes further, it goes into all of these witnesses where they're like, hey, this Italian guy came here and he voted 7 times. And when I made mention to the cop smacked me in the head with a billy club and locked me up. And it's crazy to listen to. I mean, obviously the society's less brutal today, right? There's cameras. You're not going to get away with that. But the grift of going after immigrants was always there. Why? Because traditionally they're uneducated, they're low paying, they're struggling in this country, and if you're offering any type of relief for that, obviously you're going to get them to vote to the direction that they should be. And so there was no election integrity, there was no voter ID. Well, there was technically a voter ID, but it wasn't enforced. And so that's why the Democrats go there. It's easy. It's just easy to, that's how you're going to win elections. That's how you can control elections. And because what happens is when you come to this country, you might be of free spirit, or you might not just understand the politics, and you're more likely to vote Democrat. But once you're working and you're watching yourself getting robbed blind, you tend to become more conservative. You tend to start saying, wait a minute, we're doing what? You're taking my money and you're doing what with it? And
you're spending what?
And you start to lose that Democratic base. So what do? They need new immigrants, right? Who are the new immigrants? It is what it is, So it's just always the same thing. Like, it hasn't changed. It's wild to read, man. I'm telling you, it's wild.
Yeah, that's why I think at this point, obviously, I think on a whole, I think it should be part of education, right? There's no, at least when I was growing up, there's no political class that you can get in a regular high school, and I think that should be part of the curriculum. There should be some political class that at least you learn it, and at least incentivize you to want to go out there and vote, because at least learn about it. A lot of people just are uninformed, so I think that's big. I think that's huge. Mikey G keeps asking, what do we think of the State of the Union address? Why don't we just address that before we get out of here? What are your thoughts? Trump's
I'll be dead honest. I didn't watch it at all. I voted for Donald Trump. He said that he was going to go after corrupt politicians and he wasn't going to weaponize the DOJ. And we saw Eric Adams walk on a huge corruption scandal. We saw hundreds of dirty cops walk and get rewarded when they should have faced criminal trials. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, but I mean, the evidence was overwhelming. So I was disappointed in that. We heard that, we were going to right the wrongs from all the mandates, and Mullen's still fired. I'm still retired early. Thousands and thousands of members of our military have not been reinstated or compensated. So that was all bullshit. He said that he was going to release all the Epstein files and all the pedophiles were going to be held accountable. And then we were told that if you're asking for that, you're panicking. And that's not going to come out. And nobody's being held accountable for that. And then we were told that we were going to make our food clean again and get all of the dangerous chemicals out of our bread. And next thing we know, where DOJ is seeking protections to give these companies protection and keep these ingredients in our food. We were told we were going to get food dyes out, and all of the food dyes that are causing cancer and that are really bad for our kids and our health and are causing all these health problems in America. We're going to go to the European model where we're going to use organic things and ban all of these foods. And now that's not happening. So there's really nothing I need to listen to at the State of the Union, because I'll tell you the State of the Union is that you're no different than the Democrats. because that's what the State of the Union is. We have a Republican-controlled Congress. We have a Republican-controlled House and Senate, and they've done absolutely fucking nothing, except get us into more wars, and we're about to get into another large one. So, yeah, I mean, to me, what am I listening to? Like, you're going to listen to that garbage? Do I need to hear it? I don't know who killed Charlie Kirk or why they killed Charlie Kirk. I don't know who shot at the president. We don't know anything. It's the same old grift. It's the same old deep state. And now you got this asshole Dan Bongino fucking on a podcast again, podcasting, talking about all the great things he did in 9.5 months when he ran out of the FBI. And you got Kash Patel flying across the world to pretend like he was part of the hockey team and drink beers and then go on Fox News and talk about how that was normal. I'm sorry. I'm like, checked out, my friends. Like, checked out on that administration. Horrible job. In my opinion. And, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, a lot of, you know, the tribalistic mentality in the Republican. He's doing a great job. No, he's fucking not. No, he's fucking not.
Shout out to Sergeant Renzulli. Man, I would love to know who Sergeant Renzulli really is. It's been keeping me laughing all day, but he said it's a real sweet chalice. So I got myself a nice, like, decorative set here. It's supposed to be like Roman times. And, I don't know. My water tastes good. Anyway, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Listen, I think his speech was actually more political than ever. Usually Donald Trump is kind of not too political. I think he's really getting into that political sphere. Things are changing. I think it showed a lot about strength and security for the country, but a little too political for me when it comes to Donald Trump. I mean, I think things are starting to change where he's becoming that politician. That's what I noticed. So when you get a chance to look at it, tell me what you think about that.
I'm not even listening to it. I don't give a fuck what he says. I'm not even wasting my time, dude. Like, it's bullshit. It's everything you campaigned on, you have not delivered on. Every single thing you campaigned on, you have not delivered on. Other than securing the border, and even that, they're playing games with the numbers. It looks like ComStat magic, a lot of that. So, I'm sorry. I'm not buying it.
So that's my question.
Dumping fucking a million Somalis stayed away from me. No, I'm sorry. Sorry. You sound like Barack Obama, dude. You sound like George Bush.
That's my question.
Like fucking Kamala Harris. What am I listening to?
That's my question for the speech. Like, okay, you talk about strength and security, but are we safer now than we were before? Like, what really has changed?
Dude, they're literally talking about crime stats, bro.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Talking about murders and crimes down, and we all know that there's no integrity in, like, just like our elections, there's no integrity in the crime. Zero integrity. Fucking half of the cities that bring the most crime don't even report their statistics to the FBI, and if they do, they're completely inaccurate from the stats that the FBI has. And Kash Patel's sitting up there telling you crime's down under this administration. It's like, wait, what? What? Oh, so crime reporting's good. So DC, LA, Chicago, New York, Baltimore, they're giving you the proper crime stats, Kash Patel? Is that what you're telling me? Because what you're telling me is your detective skills are just about as good as Kaz Daughtry's, and you were someone's fucking driver, and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Hey, I don't want to cut into it too much because the executive perspective is going to hit it tonight, but Sergeant Renzulli is asking, and I think we should just go briefly on it. What are your thoughts on the snowball fight? I know we kind of alluded to it with the question, but what are your thoughts briefly on the snowball effect?
Look, we'll definitely get into it on Friday, but just real quick, bro. I came on the job in 2004. If there was a snowball fight in Washington Square Park and everybody was throwing snowballs and we got called to a job and there were two of us, nobody would throw a fucking snowball in our direction. Nobody would smash ice off our fucking heads. And it's not because we're tough or because we're big or because anything else like that. It's because there was a level of respect for the police department. There was an understanding that there would be consequences for your actions. And we removed that from society. I told this story often, and I always tell this story often, like what significantly changed in New York City, and it changed after the de Blasio administration and after all of those castrated chiefs decided to go along with all of this bullshit messaging, taking the lead from the King Public Safety grifter, Bill Bratton. When I was a rookie, I was working in the 120 precinct. And me and my partner at the time, young Jewish kid, small kid, much smaller than me. Not that I'm a big guy, right? We've stood that. Not that I'm a big guy, but I'm about an average size guy, right? And so me and him, we roll up 160 Park Hill, and there's a huge barbecue going on in Park Hill. It's like 1:30 in the morning. The neighbors are complaining. We're doing a late tour. And so we walk up, and two brothers, bad dudes, bad dudes. They were notorious in Park Hill. They walk up and they're like, "What's the problem?" I'm like, "The problem is you got to shut your music down. You got to kill the DJ and you got to cut it. You guys have been going all day. It's over now. It's 1:30 in the morning." And he goes to me, what the fuck are you guys gonna do?" I was like, oh, us? I was like, "No, we're not gonna do nothing. I'm going to get on this radio over here. There's going to be a fucking helicopter flying up, and there's going to be 100 cops, and we're going to lock all your ass up, and you're going to miss the rest of the weekend in jail." And he goes, "All right, shut it down. Shut it down." Right? You don't have that anymore in the NYPD. You don't have that anymore in New York City. Why do you listen? Because he was scared of me? No, because he knew everything I said was exactly the truth. We were going to come there. We were going to lock all you up for refusal to disperse, for disorderly conduct, and they were going to spend the fucking weekend in jail. And the case was ultimately going to get thrown out, and nothing was going to come of it, but they were going to be highly inconvenienced, and they broke up the party, right? That's not happening anymore. Now, there's zero consequence for action. You have a police commissioner who's her and her mayor are just playing games, pretending like they actually give a shit. He doesn't give a shit about cops, but she cares about cops. What's ultimately going to happen? Nothing. They're going to lock up these kids. DA Alvin Bragg's going to throw the case out in a second, and no one's going to address the fact that we've lost our standing in New York City, and we lost it over a decade ago. And everyone just wants to keep fucking pretending like this is the same NYPD that's always been in existence. And it hasn't been. It's been lost. And has the NYPD had problems in years? Absolutely it has. But I could honestly sit here and tell you that in my time, I truly believe that in my era, for a window, for about a decade, we were the best version the NYPD has ever produced, has ever seen, the least corrupt, the most effective. And that is fucking gone.
Listen, you laid out some great points, and definitely we're going to jump more into this Friday for the roundtable if anybody knows, but just a precursor to it, right? Sergeant Maronzulli, you asked, and I think it's fair. It's very new. We should definitely briefly touch on it. But I think that ultimately, on an individual basis, when you're in encounters involved in situations like you said, John, people do size you up, right? And that does make a difference. But what's more important, right? It makes more important, John, you and the kid that you were working with, the small Jewish kid, when you got there, yeah, I'm sure they were sizing you up a little bit, but they knew, okay, here's somebody that can handle himself, right? Who's pretty confident, and that you're confident in your abilities. That's what's important. But what's more important is the symbolism. That uniform used to mean something. It used to mean strength, support, backbone, right? Because exactly, you showed them what it meant was there's an army behind you. That army's no longer there anymore. That army's no longer there because there's no leadership, there's no power, there's no support. That's what's the most important thing. And I believe there are times back then where you could have went to a group like that by yourself, even by yourself, because, and I know the brothers that you're talking about, James, and I forgot the other one's name. They're from 55 Bowen Street. Bad crew. Actually,
bad dude. Straight murderers.
Yeah, I think they had a hit out on a cop. I remember that's what they were telling us as rookies back then. But ultimately, those guys knew, even if you were there by yourself, the symbolism that uniform meant, the leadership's coming, their support, the entire city was behind the NYPD, and that's where things changed. So the symbolism is gone. And now, even though the standards have been much lowered, and we had people back then that slipped through the cracks, but back then it wasn't as noticeable. If someone slipped through the cracks because we were strong as a whole, they would not be noticed. But now you notice people that are not meant to be cops because we don't have that strong symbolism. We're not strong as a whole. And ultimately, that's why I asked Brandon that question, what has changed culturally? That uniform doesn't mean what it used to mean. It's just a material. It's just a piece of clothing. But before, if you had that uniform just on a hanger walking with it, that uniform meant something. What did that uniform mean? It meant the city was behind you. It meant that there was leadership, that there were consequences that if you challenge that uniform. But that uniform is just material now. It's just clothing. It's unfortunate, but that's what we've gotten to. And I think that it's just getting worse. And I've been saying it for the longest period of time. It's unfortunate. I do think a cop is going to lose their lives by the hand of another without a firearm. And we're getting there. They're throwing snowballs at them. And I said, listen, if you want to call the police and say, hey, we want the cops to be involved in a snowball fight. But what they did was assault. It was a different attack. So there's no long support. You're 100% right, John. I think there was a time, and I'm not saying I would do it. I don't think it's smart. But I think you could probably write a group of 20 people summonses, and no one would challenge you because they knew if you got on that radio, and that radio was more powerful than the firearm, the army was coming. And now, unfortunately, and you guys can probably tell me if you're active, you don't really know who's coming anymore, if they're coming. I mean, I saw at the end of my career where people called 85s, anyone who's outside the NYPD, and 85 means request for assistance, and nobody was coming. And if they did show up, they weren't helping. They were just standing because no one wants to get involved in anything because there's no support. The symbolism is gone, brother. It's gone. We'll get more into it on Friday, but great question. Appreciate it.
But just last point on it. Like, those two dudes that got ice smashed off the back of the head and on their face, they were big dudes. They could have took any one of those people out, right? So it wasn't that they were meek or timid or anything like that. It was the fact that there's zero respect for the NYPD. There's zero respect for authority in New York City. And that should scare the shit out of everybody, dude. You know, I'm watching all these people talking shit. It was just a snowball fight. How are you going to feel if that was your disabled mother or your elderly grandparents and they were doing that and there's no one to fucking stop them? How are you going to feel? You know, I'm looking at women talking shit and then go just look at their husbands and be like, wait. You don't want the police to be competent and to have an authority figure? You think that guy's going to keep you safe, you and your kids? What are you going to do when that mob turns on you? What are you going to do when that happens? You know, and you know, I don't know, man. I'm just like, we're really headed for a bad place, man. I'm really worried about it, dude. I really am, like, because it was a snowball today, you know, and we had a kid on here, and he said something when he was talking. It was prior to Charlie Kirk getting murdered, and he had I had spoken with him. He wrote that book about all the terrorist acts that happened in the 70s in New York City. Shit, I can't remember his name. I can't remember the book name, but it was a really good book. And he was saying that, like, oh, you know, it starts with a sandwich, because he was talking about what happened in D.C. when that kid ran up drunk and threw a sandwich off the cop.
Yep.
You know, it starts with a snowball too. You know,
yeah.
What's that? You know, Mondani's telling you it's a snowball fight. What happens when he? You know, I'm gonna probably put out a meme later. I was working on it. I just haven't had time to do it. You know, like a satirical meme, because, you know, when I heard that, I'm like, wait. So it was a snowball fight? I wasn't engaged in the snowball fight. So in my head, I'm like, I could just walk up to a cop, punch him in the face, and just be like, nah. It was a boxing match, bro. It was a boxing match. I was just playing. It was a boxing match. You know, oh, yeah, well, you know, he got a concussion and he got injured and he got cuts on his face. But, you know, I don't think anybody should be prosecuted. It was a boxing match.
You know what infuriates me the most? What pisses me off? This is what infuriates me the most. Yeah, by the way, Joe Mango's right. Pete Moscos. It was Pete Moscos. Thank you so much.
No, it wasn't Pete Moscos.
It wasn't Pete?
No. Pete wrote another book talking back from the brink. Pete was actually out there shoveling snow for Mondani for $30 an hour.
I don't know. I think it was Pete. I think
it wasn't Pete. Nope.
You sure?
I'm 100%.
I got to look into it. But either way, what if Joe Mango? Thanks for trying, though. I appreciate it. What infuriates me the most, honestly, what pissed me off, is the response to the NYPD. Is like, oh, we're going to go out there and arrest them. So now the detectives have to do this full investigation, get pictures, arrest them. Why don't we have support and leadership so it doesn't happen? Prevent it from happening in the first place. That pissed me off. Anytime something happens to a cop, they get assaulted or they get beat up and there's some stupid video. Oh, the detectives go out and arrest them. Great. But what do we do to stop it? We need to stop before it happens. And I'm telling you right now, I've been saying it for a long time, and I don't want it to happen. I hope I'm wrong. A cop will die by the hands of another. A cop will die by the hands of another in New York City, the NYPD, because of this cultural shift, because there's no support, no leadership, without a firearm. And they're going to say, oh, what do we need to do? We've been telling you what to do. It's very simple. The leadership from within has to have a support system. I blame the leadership. Yeah, the kid, Brandon Castro talked about bail reform. We got CCRB, all this oversight. But if internally, if we're strong, they can't penetrate the NYPD. It's like an egg, right? You hold an egg at the right points, you can break it, right? I'm sorry. If you hold an egg at the right points, it's strong. But if you hold it at the middle, you can crush it. It's the same thing with the NYPD. If you have strong leadership, no one can penetrate it. But because the leadership is weak, anyone can penetrate it. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and just the last point on this. I know we'll talk about it on Friday. Ron and Rob are going to talk about it tonight. Check it out. But the fact that we even have to have wanted flyers for these people or make them wanted, that annoys me more than anything, because that incident should have been squashed right then and there. People should have been arrested from that scene right then and there. Once the troops came, they sat there and they all just got bombarded with snow, and there was no leadership. There was no guidance. There was no supervision. That would have never happened. I don't care today. Put me in uniform right now. Sign me up, Jessica Tisch. I'll pass your physical. I'll pass your fucking psych as long as you don't pull some bullshit shit on me. Let's go. Put me out there. We can fight about my back pay, because that shit is never happening. I'm lining that street up and we're walking forward. Like, that is not fucking happening. That the little kid throwing gang signs with his little toothpick arm, that guy's going right down getting arrested. And like, you're getting arrested. I'm sorry. You're getting arrested, disorderly conduct. Nobody's going to sit there and throw snowballs at 30 cops and them sit there with their heads down and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. No, there's going to be mass arrests. I'm calling as a lieutenant. I'm calling, get the cells ready in One Police Plaza. That is fucking bullshit. That was bullshit. If that's how you're going to handle a little period of civil unrest, how are you going to handle when it's real? You couldn't handle a bunch of morons throwing snowballs. You didn't know how to put that in. And by the way, they weren't just pelting cops. They were pelting people all over the street. Nobody was safe. I mean, that was fucking ridiculous. If that God, summer's coming, people, and it's gonna be a hot and heavy summer. And Jessica Tisch is only gonna be able to get some great headlines every now and then. It's not gonna be, the reality of what this failure of the last decade, this progressive mentality, this public safety reform mentality. It's gonna come. You're gonna really see it full force this summer.
Yeah, listen, there's no doubt about it. That would have been my 125th CCRB. That would have been another substantiated civilian complaint. But that's the problem, is because you'll take action, I'll take action. There are plenty of people in the NYPD right now will take action, but the majority of them won't. It's a mixed bag right now because it's not it's not uniformity. We talk about uniform. It's not uniformity. They're not walking in lockstep. There's no support. There's no support to say, you know what? Oh, we understand you took action. You know what's going to happen? You're going to have some boss like, oh, you generated a lot of threat resistance injury reports. Now I got to go to a meeting and talk about this. This is going to come up at ComStat. You know what? Fuck you, because that's what will come up. I'm telling you right now, I know, because I've been involved in those situations where my commander's like, hey, you think you get a couple more guns? And then what do you think those guns equivalent to? Threat resistance injury reports and CCRBs. Oh, yeah, it's a lot of TRIs, These are going to come up in meetings. Really? What do you think was going to happen? You think they were going to be nice and gift wrap? You think violent perpetrators just hand their guns? Are you kidding me? And this is the problem. Weak leadership, because the leadership has been pandering like they're politicians. That's the problem. The leadership of the NYPD has turned it into a weak egg. Put ball gags in their mouth. That's the problem. They don't have balls. Somebody like retired Chief Mike Marino, who's not here right now, he would never allow that. Right? If he was your boss, you knew that guy had your back, right? That was the support system. But you don't have that right now. You don't have that anymore. And what are these? And if these guys did take action, it would be a complete different story. I wouldn't blame them for taking action. If they threw a snowball, imagine they threw a snowball back, what would happen? Forget about it. Talk about a snowball fight. It's not a snowball fight.
Oh my God, there'll be lawsuits up the yin yang. You smash a thing of ice off somebody's face. Ridiculous, dude. But and I love everybody's like blaming Zoran. Blame yourself, man. This is 10 years in the making. I blame the Chiefs and the NYPD more than I blame Zoran Mondani. This has nothing to do with who the mayor is. I mean, we could go back to de Blasio with the water buckets, the numerous water buckets, the 2 cops getting water bucket dumped on the head, the other 2 cops making arrests, people dumping water on them. So that was twice under de Blasio. We remember Eric Adams at the Kai Cenat riot, right? You remember that? Remember what happened to those Chiefs? They had plywood and they were getting bottles chucked at them and they did nothing. They looked like a bunch of morons, and they did nothing. They did nothing.
Wasn't that Madry was there, right? Didn't Madry say,
Yeah, Madry. Oh, we had the slightest touch. The slightest touch.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? This is where your fucking slightest touch got you. You didn't have a slight touch with Epps, though, right? No slight touch with Epps.
No, that was
we were grabbing all that,
He had a bigger touch there, but yet in Staten Island,
touch, Madam Speaker, the slightest.
Yet in Staten Island, they were locking people up for jaywalking. You got people throwing stuff. You're getting hit in the head in Union Square. They did nothing about it. 2 styles of policing, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, so sick shit, man. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's who do we got? We got super chats, 2 super chats. We got P.O. Fronte says present for duty, gentlemen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you always being here. Thank you. And we had an executive who went in his pocket again, Chief of Police, Mike Marino. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you always being here. We appreciate
Mike,
you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you,
Mike,
guys.
we take hundreds too, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's we got to come back to that variable supplement. We were doing well.
Bro. Yeah, sick stuff, man. So yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But make sure you check out Executive Perspective. What time is it again, Eric? I'm drawing a blank.
Dude, you have no idea. That's hilarious. 5:05 p.m.
What was it? 7? No.
17:05, brother.
17:05, baby.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Check them out tonight. I'm looking forward to that conversation. That'll be a good one. And we'll be back at you on Friday, peoples. Next Wednesday, we got a congressional candidate coming on, so that should be pretty interesting. Yeah, we'll keep rocking out, baby. So
look how Ron, what's up, brother? Love you, man. Ron, look how Ron put the time. 5:05. Yeah. 17:05. Where's Rob? Where's Rob? They're throwing a good, some good sarcastic joke right now. Rob, where are you? Rob must be right now. Rob's in Florida right now trying to get a coat. He doesn't realize now he's still in the cold. He's like, "Well, where's my jacket? I'm in Florida."
Look, I'm not complaining, bro. I saw what the hell's going on in the city, and I'm like, I'm not.
Dude, it's rough out there, man. Right now in New York City, and they had snow already, right? So it's just compounded. They're getting piled on. Anyway, listen, I think 2 hours into it, I want to thank everyone. Like, share, and subscribe. When you hit that hype button. We really appreciate it. We touched a little bit on the snowball effect. We'll get more into it. But, of course, Executive Perspective. I think they're going to have a great spin, great perspective tonight. 17:05, that's military, John, and 5:05 p.m. That's the time. And if you haven't watched 10-4 Tavern, they got a great cast of characters on there. Please start getting the 10-4 Tavern. Those guys are great. Pete Fuselli, Tom Joyce. They really got a great guest from the entire country, all over, putting us on a national level. I really appreciate it. Executive Perspective shows off the hook every week. And, of course, we'll be back Friday for the roundtable as always. And we'll have our intel with us. Marlon will be here. So, yeah. Don't worry. That's why, John, when you weren't here Monday last week, I'm like, oh, and we had to announce a show. I'm like, well, if John was here, he would probably just figure out what time it was.
Marlon shoveling right now. Leave him alone, all right?
Well, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Outstanding. Be safe out there. If you're, if you're active on the job right now, be careful. The snowballs become bigger issues. So be careful out there. Be safe out there. We got you back.
Yep. And if you're in Queens, hit up Brandon Castro, all right? Let's start pushing him. So here we go.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. all of a sudden they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime. But nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?